Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So it's a bit of a different video today, but I wanted to share with you how I made this lady sculpture out of cake. I posted this on my Instagram a couple of weeks ago and so many of you requested a more detailed tutorial, so here it is. So for this cake, I used a ready layered and crumb coated 4-inch cake. Now, this cake I actually had in the freezer from a previous YouTube tutorial, so even though I don't expect everyone to have a frozen cake, the trick to a sculpted cake is that it's extremely cold. So to begin sculpting, I used a small knife to begin carving the cake, and you can see why the coldness of the cake helps maintain its stability. I began carving in the middle section of the cake to create the waist of the torso, before going in with extra details around the chest area, the shoulders, the neckline, and also the groin. Now, sculpting a torso isn't an easy job, so I would recommend referring to a photo or a model like I have in the background as reference points. But the idea right now is to just build more of a generic shape and then go in with more details afterwards, so don't worry about getting all the specific details in now. So what I've done here is actually, with all the offcuts, I've made a sort of cake pop mix. I've crumbed up the offcuts and mixed them with some buttercream, and I've added it to the sculpture to enhance certain features. For example, the boobs, the hips, and of course the bum. Now, I probably should have worn gloves because it was a pretty messy job, but this cake wasn't going anywhere. This was just for me to practice and try out this technique. But you can see how malleable this cake pop consistency is. So for example, the bum needed a bit more juice on it, so I added it in those places. Now, once it got to an overall figure, I refrigerated it before going on with a ganache layer. So this ganache is a thicker ganache. It's actually double the amount of chocolate to cream. Now, the reason for this is because I'm going to be using the ganache as part of the sculpting. So at first, I went on with my palette knife and spread a layer of ganache over the whole cake. And to be honest, most of the details that I cut into the cake with were hidden, which is why I mentioned it doesn't have to be too exact when you're sculpting the cake. But the idea is to build up this layer, and you can also see that because of the coldness of the cake and the fact that I'm using the thick ganache, the ganache is hardening, which is exactly what I wanted. The beauty of this thick ganache is that it's really sturdy and you can really add more shape and details with it. So once I had a nice thick layer of ganache on there, it was time to start smoothing out. Now, this was really similar to working with clay, which is kind of how I imagined it, but of course it is chocolate. So if you start using your hands as well, it can melt onto it, which is why I had a small piece of acetate to smooth out this ganache. Now, this process took quite a while. This is just a preview of what I went into, but I think I took about 20 minutes smoothing this cake out. You can see that the acetate bends, which is why it's quite good to work on a shaped cake. And after a while, with a lot of patience, I managed to get an overall smooth finish, and already I really liked the look of it. There were still a few imperfections, but I think it just adds to the effect of it being a sculpture. Now, around the boob area was quite difficult. I actually kept taking off ganache, so after a few attempts, I managed to get an overall smoothness, and I loved what I saw. But one thing was missing, and that was the belly button, so I got a toothpick and poked it through. Now, as I mentioned, the ganache was hardening on its own, so there was no need to firm this up again in the fridge before dusting it with edible gold dust. But if you feel that your ganache is getting soft at any point, then just pop it in the fridge for a few minutes and it will harden up. Now, even though I liked the look of it, just being chocolate ganache, after I put this gold dust on it, it really made it look like metallic sculpture. I couldn't quite believe that this had worked. This had just been an idea, and I loved the outcome, which means more sculpted cakes are definitely going to be on the way. And if you're brave enough to try one out yourself, make sure you tag me in your creation. I'd love to see it. And in the meantime, we'll see you soon for more tutorials.